Here are some quick facts about BPD because there's so much misinformation on here. BPD is a personality disorder. It impacts how a person interacts with themselves and the world. Some core symptoms are unstable, intense relationships, which often includes idolization and devaluation, or splitting, unstable and also intense emotions, and a poor sense of self. There are 9 clinical symptoms of BPD. You have to have at least 5 to meet criteria. Typical onset of BPD begins in early adolescence, specifically around age 14 or 1 year before puberty begins. BPD is said to be biosocial, which means that there is a biological component and an environmental component that leads to it developing. The biological component is labeled as a biological susceptibility, which is something someone must have in order to then develop BPD with the environmental component. The environmental component is thought to be chronic invalidation in childhood. This is typically caregivers or parents that are chronically invalidating. Invalidation is the dismissal or rejection or minimization of someone's emotions or experiences. So chronic invalidation can sound like, just get over it, it's fine, it's not a big deal, you shouldn't be sad about this. This leads to issues regulating emotions. However, it is likely that emotional sensitivity exists prior to the environmental component. BPD symptoms typically peak in early adolescence and early adulthood. The typical trajectory of BPD is that it improves over time. BPD is a treatable condition. DBT is the first line of treatment for BPD typically, and it is evidence-based. It is a form of CBT, however, it targets BPD individuals specifically. In that crisis management is a priority of DBT, and so are regulating emotions and distress tolerance. DBT was developed by Marsha Linehan, who had BPD herself. She needed a way to treat her own BPD and saw that there weren't many resources for it, so she created DBT. There are some structural differences in a person with BPD's brain. However, it is not known if BPD causes this or if it's pre-existing. There isn't significant research on this. However, we are led to believe that DBT actually does help correct some of these structural differences, including hyperactivity in the amygdala, which is what is said to drive a lot of the emotional dysregulation in BPD. It is more common for people with BPD to have other mental illnesses than it is not. Mood disorders and personality disorders in addition to BPD are most common. The prognosis of BPD is pretty promising, with 50 to 80% recovery rates and around 86 to 99% remission rates. BPD was very misunderstood prior to being added to the diagnostic manual in 1980. In 1938, it was named borderline personality disorder, however, it was completely misunderstood. Researchers thought that BPD bordered neurotic disorders and psychotic disorders. They were correct in that it didn't fit into either category. It's not a neurotic disorder, it's also not a psychotic disorder. However, it's its own